Hello and welcome back. In the last section we downloaded some data from Yahoo and we've processed it to adjust the high and low prices to go along with the adjusted close prices. And we're now going to start to produce some graphs and charts to illustrate the fortunes of this particular equity. Now, when we downloaded the data, it came down in CSV format, and what I've done is I've actually saved it in Excel 2010 XLSM format. So make sure you save your spreadsheet if you're working along here, perhaps using a different stock yourself. And at the moment, the data is arranged in ascending date order, which is how I need it. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is to plot the closing prices as a simple line graph, a very straightforward way to start. So we select column A, which is the date column, hold the control key down and select adjusted close, which is column I at the moment. Onto the insert tab, line is one of the other options. And from the available line charts, let's just do a straightforward 2D line. And there we are. Now let me just make that a little bigger. Move it very slightly. And there we are. That shows the adjusted closing price for this particular stock over a 10-year period. Now I want to change a few things about this chart. We really don't need that legend. The legend only says adjusted close, which is that we know that that's what that's plotting. And let's change the title. And we could, if we wanted to or needed to, change the scale on the vertical axis so that we didn't include parts of the scale above and below the max and min. Now in this case the minimum does go below 10, the maximum does go above 70. So the values for the scale which Excel 2010 has worked out are actually pretty good in this case, so I'm not going to make any changes on the vertical scale. However, I would like an axis title on the vertical axis, so let's just go to layouts, and I think this layout would probably be more suitable. That's right, that gives me the title I need. Let's just type on there, we're going to put adjusted closing price in US dollars. Click on that. Probably don't actually need adjusted closing price in the title, so let's get rid of that. Over here, that can go again. And now the only thing I want to change now is the labeling on the horizontal axis. So right click there, format axis. At the moment, I'm quite happy with the fact that we've got a tick every year and so on, but I don't particularly want this date, the 11th of May, roughly in the middle of each year. So I'm going to go to the number page, and the format code I'm going to use, I'm just going to put the year on there. Let's try closing that. Now that's nearly right. That actually gives me 2 per year, which is not really what I'd intended. So let me just change that again. And in terms of the major units, I want that to be fixed at 1 year. And the minor units, I don't want those at all. So I'm now pretty happy with that chart, but I'm going to do one more thing to it, and this is quite a common and popular requirement, which is that I'm actually going to also show the volume of trade on the same chart, and there's a particular way of doing that that gives a pretty good effect. Now what we're going to do effectively is to draw two charts on the same graph. So what we're going to do is we're going to plot the adjusted close again, but we're also going to plot the volume. Now clearly these are two completely different sorts of entity. One of them is a number of shares, the other one is a price in dollars. So there's going to be a certain amount of adjustment to make that work. The easiest way to demonstrate this is if I insert a couple of blank columns to the right of the date, and then I'm going to copy first of all the close column, adjusted close column I should say, and then secondly the volume. Then I'm going to select those three columns and I'm going to do insert line, and then all I'm going to do is insert a 2D line. Now Excel 2010 has created this effectively pair of lines for me, but because the scale it's used is the one here on the vertical axis here relates to volume, the numbers of course are vastly greater for volume than they are for price. So you can't actually see price, it's basically a line along the bottom. We're not going to need that legend, so let's get rid of that legend. That'll give us a little bit more working space. And let's do a little bit of work on the volume chart itself. Now to do this we're going to need to first of all select the volume chart. So if I hover over part of the chart, actually see the selection markers on there now, right click, and I get Format Data Series. Now at the moment for the volume chart the series is being plotted on the primary axis. This is the primary vertical axis. Change it to the secondary axis. Straight away you can see the effect that that has. Now I'm going to, while the volume chart is still selected, I'm going to change the chart type, and instead of a line for the volume I'm going to choose one of the column charts. So I'm going to go to column and just click the first one, the clustered column. Click on OK. And now you can begin to see how this is going to work. Now it's worth bearing in mind here that what we do next will largely depend on exactly the stock and the history that we're dealing with. In this particular case the price has varied from very low value below $10 up to over 70. We could, by introducing basically a negative range for price over here, move the whole of the price line up so that it doesn't clash so much with the volume chart here. That might look a bit strange though and actually be quite misleading. So in order to make a bit more space and to separate these two out a little bit more, the best bet is to make the volume chart a little bit lower, and the easiest way to do that is to change that vertical scale. So format that axis. We currently have a maximum of 3.5 million. Supposing I make it 5 million as a maximum, just to show how to go about this, click on close. By changing that to 5 million, obviously the volume goes down, you get less of an impression. Now obviously it looks less dramatic when we've got these peaks, these spikes, but as I said before, how you adjust this, how you adjust each of the scales will depend on what you actually discover when you actually put this chart together. So I've done the same sort of changes that we did last time. I put a chart title on, axis title, and changed the labeling on the horizontal axis. To put a title on the secondary vertical axis, on the Layout tab under Axis Titles, you may recall from much earlier on, we can have a secondary vertical axis title. Currently there's none. We can make it a rotated title, so click on there and we can just put that as volume traded, tick that, and there we are. And of course, as usual, once I've got the content I require in my chart, I could go back into design and change perhaps the style. A pretty straightforward one there. And that's it really. That's how to put two charts on the same chart, in this case showing financial information related to a particular stock. So that's it for this section. In the next section we're going to look at a couple of types of chart that are very specifically related to finance information, and that is their prime purpose. I'll see you then.